Hi, I'm Dr. George Yancey. Let's shatter some paradigms. And the paradigm I want to share today is about Christians and persecution. Now, as you know, one of my playlists is on Christianophobia. This is the discussion about the prejudice, the hostility towards Christians. So you would think that I would like to talk about Christians being persecuted. In fact, there is a narrative out there about Christians facing persecution. So I thought about this, and for some reason it didn't sit well with me. So I decided to do something which a lot of people don't do when they come to these things, is actually look up what persecution means. So I went online and I found this definition from Oxford. Persecution: hostility and ill treatment, especially on the basis of ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation, or political beliefs. Ill treatment. Has that happened because people are Christians? I believe so. Hostility. Has that happened because people are Christians? Undoubtedly. And I've documented this. And if you want to see this documentation, check out some more of my videos on this Christianophobia playlist. Technically, Christians can say they face persecution in our society. Now, having said that, I could say I face persecution as an African American. I face hostility in my life because I'm an African American. There are people wearing MAGA hats who can say they face persecution because they wear MAGA hats. Ill treatment, hostility, that's all it takes, remember? There are people who are on the left who can say they've been persecuted, been called woke, been mistreated. There are people because they are heterosexual, because they've been in environments where they felt hostility. You see, the definition of persecution was much more wide-ranging than I anticipated. Technically, by this definition, Christians can say they face persecution. And yet, I still don't like it. Because I think there's the technical definition, and then there's how we interpret that definition. And the way that we generalize and interpret persecution is people being thrown in jail, people being beaten up, people being killed. I'm not saying that never happens in the United States, but it's very rare for a Christian to face those things simply because they're a Christian. Now, if you follow me on Christianophobia, you know that I believe and know that there is discrimination from time to time. I have a couple of videos talking about discrimination in academia, the way the media ill-treats Christians. I give examples of it in my basic Christianophobia video. So you know that, yes, discrimination does happen, mistreatment does happen. Christians have every right to say they face discrimination in our society. I'm not equating it to this type of discrimination others may face. I'm just saying it exists. So I'm not saying there's no persecution, therefore Christians have everything great. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that our image of persecution as throwing people in jail, beating them up, possibly killing them, that's not a common occurrence in Christians in today's society. And so when we use the word persecution, I think we're conveying an image that's not accurate. We should talk about discrimination. And as I've said, that is there. We should talk about bias. There's a couple of cases of politicians who use a religious test. Against Christians. Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, who could have been the next president of the United States. I will post in the description links to examples of them using the religious tests. What I mean by the religious test is that when they're evaluating someone for an appointment or nomination, they don't evaluate just their political attitudes or their accomplishments. They actually evaluate their theological beliefs. And based on those theological beliefs, they state they will not vote for this person. I find that troubling. I would find it troubling if we did it to a Muslim. I would find it troubling if we did it to a Jew. I would find it troubling if we're doing that to atheists. So my argument that we should not be using the term persecution is not that we should not talk about Christian discrimination, anti-Christian discrimination. We should. We should address that. We have just as much right to be recognized, to be treated equally as everyone else. But persecution gives a feeling of a type of oppression that we're not seeing. And I also fear that when we use persecution, it ties into a Christian identity politics. And you may know from another one of my playlists that I'm not a fan of identity politics on the left or the right. So I don't talk about Christian persecution, even though technically I could. By that definition, I could talk about Christian persecution, but I don't. Because I think it produces a perception, a reality that is not where we need to be. Now, I think we're in a better position talking about anti-Christian discrimination. I think we're in a better position talking about some of the biases in some of the cultural institutions, in academia, in the media, in the arts. I think we're a better place to talk about those things without bringing in persecution. Because persecution culturally demands a higher level of evidence. And we could go to definitions and say, well, technically we're persecuted, but then, once again, almost everyone in our society is persecuted to some degree or another. Almost everyone in our society at some point is ill-treated or mistreated because of either their race or their religion or their political beliefs or things of this nature. So that means persecution almost is meaningless when we just use that definition. And that's why I like to think about the cultural norm of persecution, the norm of thinking about people being thrown in jail and things of this nature. And that's just not the case. So when we lead with persecution, we have this heavy burden. But we talk about Christianophobia, and we talk about discrimination, mistreatment, bias, things that are noted, things that are documented in some of my work, some of the work of others, then we have an honesty that sometimes is lacking from those who talk about how Christians are persecuted. This is something to think about. Yes, technically we are persecuted. No, I think it's a mistake to talk about anti-Christian persecution. Did this shatter some paradigms? Paradigms about Christians and persecution. Paradigms about how, while technically we're persecuted, it's ill-advised to use that when we're describing the plight of Christians in our society. Well, I hope I give you something to think about. I hope I give you something to think about as far as how we address ourselves and how we address the nature of being a Christian in today's United States. If you enjoy this, please give a like. If you disagree, please comment. Comment if you do agree. If you want conversations like this, please subscribe. I'm trying to do this on a regular basis, and the more people who subscribe, the easier it is for me to do. But thanks for coming in and talking about persecution and Christians. And please come back. We can shatter some more paradigms.